So now we're going to test out the Lenovo IdeaPad Y500 playing Crysis 3, obviously a very demanding game. Now our Lenovo configuration has a quad-core i7 CPU, Ivy Bridge 3rd generation, running at 2.4 gigahertz. That's the full mobile CPU, not a ULV CPU, obviously. And we have dual NVIDIA GT650M graphics cards, each with 2 gigs of graphics, one built into the computer, the other is in the hot swappable bay in the computer, so it's an optional second graphics card. We have 8 gigs of RAM, a 5400 RPM hard drive augmented with a 16 gig SSD. So for Crysis 3, here are our settings. We're running at 1920 by 1080 resolution, full screen obviously yes. Anti-aliasing set to low, texture resolution is high, VSync is turned on, system spec is high, and indeed the system spec is high. So we're going to give it a go now and you're going to see how well it does. Frame rate, as you can see in the upper left corner, thanks to Fraps, is hovering around 30 frames per second, dropping a bit down now into the 20s, mid-20s, back up to the 30s. And we're sticking in the low 30s right now, which is what most folks would call playable. I don't like to see it drop down to the 20s like that, so we'll see how it continues to progress. So on average you're getting mid-20s to mid-30s for frame rate. So let's try dialing down those settings a little bit, see if we can improve things. Now we're back in Crysis 3 again, and we've set our system spec to medium. Previously it was on high, and we've turned off anti-aliasing. And you can see now we're running from mid-30s up to upper 40s for frame rate now. Much, much better, much smoother. The game still looks quite good too. Even medium spec is running pretty good detail here. Great frame rates now. Even popping up into the mid-50s for frames occasionally. Wow, a lot smoother, much nicer. So there it is. If you want to use the Lenovo IdeaPad Y500 with dual graphics cards, even with Crysis 3, pretty demanding game, medium settings are going to be the way to go with anti-aliasing turned off. But then you get really nice performance. And now we're going to test out Batman Arkham City on the Lenovo IdeaPad Y500 with dual NVIDIA GT650M graphics card and Intel Core i7 2.4 GHz CPU. You can see our settings right here. We're going at 1920 by 1080. VSync is on, anti-aliasing is high at the moment. We'll see how that works. We actually turned on DirectX 11 features, which usually kills a lot of systems. So we'll see if that works for us here. And pretty much all effects are turned on to high except for ambient occlusion, which is turned off. So let's give it a go and see what happens. And ththese frame rates are not conducive to having a real good fight, are they? So we're going to back down on our settings, because we're only in the mid-20s for frame rate. And now our frame rates are much better. We've turned off DirectX 11 mode and turned off anti-aliasing. We left everything else on high though. So it's a pretty good looking experience, and now we can literally whip our bad guys here. And this is a pretty busy setting, obviously, a lot of bad guys, so it should be about as sad as your frame rates are going to get right now. Still very solid. So it's not everything your dedicated desktop gaming rig might be, but it's still pretty darn good for a 15.6-inch, $1,100 portable machine. So now we're going to try out Mass Effect 3, and you can see we have the Mass Effect 3 configuration utility up, so you can see the settings we're using. We're running at full screen, full 1920 by 1080 resolution, anti-aliasing on, motion blur on, dynamic shadows are turned on, number of cinematic lights is 3, use for spherical harmonic lighting is turned on, and 2x anisotropic filtering. So those are pretty aggressive settings, and we're going to see how it plays in a multiplayer setting. This is a good test not only of the performance of the system itself, the quad-core Core i7 CPU and dual NVIDIA GT 650M graphics cards, but network connection and performance. We're using the Intel wireless card over our 802.11bgn network on N mode right now, and you can see latency is just great. It's playing very smoothly. We have fraps running. Frame rates are pretty much pegging at 60. You can't get better than that. That has to be probably the maximum the game supports. So ultra smooth, ultra playable. Looking very good. Some pretty decent sound out of our JBL built-in speakers. We're using the built-in audio on the notebook.